I'm Reuters columnist James Saft. So what was that you were saying about globalization being inexorable? A look at a series of recent stories. The Chinese-Japanese territorial spat and its real economic consequences, and a drop in global trade and cross-border lending shows that the world may be becoming actually less tightly integrated and a lot more economically unpredictable. This idea that globalization will go on forever, that the world will continue to become more and more economically integrated with an ever more complex global supply chain and increasingly international corporations and banks, it lies at the heart of most mainstream economic thinking. According to this view of the world, the undoubted power of globalization to create more trade and more wealth and more profit means that over time, governments and people will come to exert less influence over their own national economy, giving up some power, in effect, in exchange for higher growth. That might work over the long term, but the short term is looking a lot bumpier. Japan on Monday showed some truly awful trade figures, showing a fall of 10% in exports in September. Underneath it was a massive fall in exports in Japan, and this was driven almost certainly by tensions over a group of disputed islands, which sparked anti-Japanese protests in China, attacks on businesses thought to be Japanese, and even on cars made by Japanese companies. Japanese exports to China fell 14%, and exports of Japanese cars fell by 45%, and motorcycles 31%. Chinese tourists to Japan also fell, according to the Bank of Japan, probably for the same reason. To be sure, this data, it's in part about weakness in the economy in China, but it's undoubtedly about something else, a nationalistic dispute, which by its very nature is really unpredictable and not at all economically rational, at any rate. And it's not just Asia. Global economy looks like it's in the middle of a really rare outright decline in trade. Now, this is driven by weakness in the Eurozone and elsewhere, but it's also, I think, probably being helped along by subtle changes in post-crisis attitudes about risk and about trade. This is something that happens only about once every 10 years. So the fact that we're getting another decline in global trade on the back of the 2009 recession is really significant. Recent data, too, showed that there's actually been a decline in the amount of cross-border loans, and a historic fifth biggest quarterly contraction on record in global interbank lending. Now again, it's about the Eurozone in part. People are worried about lending into Spain, lending into Greece, and they're pulling back lines from those places. But it's also really just about a change in attitude. National regulators don't want their banking systems to lose all their money in foreign places where the sovereign is going to end up having to foot the bill. Now, this means that they're putting pressure on them to do less global lending. That may be good policy, but it's also going to be probably pretty rough for the global economy. The idea that the world's going to become a smaller and smaller, flatter and flatter place probably just no longer holds up.